I'd just like to start by congratulating the organisers of this really timely conference, and also embrace the breadth of the conference. It's terrific to find representation from such a wide number of countries. Well, I won't go on too long. I just wanted to make four main points. The first is, well, where did all this start, or when did all this start? And I think really the origins of this Cold War onslaught from the United States essentially date from the 2008 financial crisis. This was completely unexpected as far as the West was concerned, and it led to a big shift in the center of gravity of power from the United States to China. And it undermined the previous position that the Americans had held, which had underpinned their conception of the relationship between the two countries after the Nixon-Mao Accord. And those two propositions were, firstly, that China could never be an serious economic challenger to the United States. And secondly, China's rise was unsustainable because it didn't have a Western-style political system. Well, in 2008, 2009, that period, these positions were undermined. And I think basically the American governing elite began to shift its position and from something different. It now came to regard China not in that kind of potentially benign relationship, but as a threat to American global hegemony. And that process continued and developed, and of course acquired its present meaning with the election of Trump as the president in 2016. And I would characterize that this period and the present as the West, well, the America in particular, to a lesser extent, other parts of the West, as hegemonic angst. They are now, feeling the danger of being displaced. And this brings me to my second point. And that is that what this clearly shows is the inability of the United States as the presiding hegemon in the world to come to terms with the fact that it cannot continue in that position, that it's an unsustainable position, but it cannot bring itself to believe in it because, essentially the American DNA is that country has to be the #1 country in the world. But that is not possible. And we can see that already very clearly in all sorts of ways. But we're going to be witnesses to a very painful process, not just over the next few years, but I would suggest over quite a long period of America writhing, trying to prevent this trend, this inevitable, it seems to me, trend of its displacement as the most powerful country in the world happening. And I wonder whether, if I can just have a moment of more broader historical reflection, I wonder how long it will take the US and other countries like my own UK to come to terms with a world which is no longer Western dominated and Western centric. Hegemons find it very difficult to let go. I mean, even China, if you go back to the late 18th and early 19th century when China began its decline, it took 150 years really for China to come to terms with a different reality. And I think it's going to take the West, and America in particular, a long time to come to terms with this new sort of reality. Now, where are we now? Well, I think I've come around to the view that we're actually the Cold War has started. It's not the coming Cold War, it started. Of course, the last Cold War lasted a long time and it goes through many phases. So it's not a static situation. But I think we've now entered the new Cold War. And I think we should expect it to last quite a long time in reality, because the only thing that will bring it to a conclusion is if essentially is if the United States shift its position. What does that mean? It comes to terms with the reality that it has to share primacy in the world with China. That is really the condition, it seems to me, that's the historical condition that has to change. When the Americans decided to, at 72 hours notice, close the consulate building, Chinese consulate in Houston, my reaction was rather the same as Wang Wen said earlier on. I would not be surprised if the United States doesn't break off diplomatic relations with China well before the presidential election. Of course, this is all part of the theater of Trump's re-election, but I think that that is definitely a possibility, taking us back to before 1979 when Carter came to recognize China, give diplomatic relations to China. So my final point is this, and that is, I don't think, but obviously this Cold War will have some of the characteristics of the previous Cold War, and I think that's been illustrated by some of the points that have been made in the discussion. But I don't think it will be a rerun of the last Cold War. And I would say that for various reasons, but I would just like to highlight two reasons why I feel that to be the case. Firstly, China is far stronger than the Soviet Union ever was. The Soviet Union was never a serious economic challenger to the United States. And China is in a totally different position. China is already in some areas already ahead of the United States, and its potential and capacity is much greater than that of the United States. So the United States is faced with a completely different kind of problem in China as compared with the Soviet Union. And the second thing I would like to emphasize is that I don't think that China's response is going to be the same as the Soviet Union's. I mean, I think one of the things I would criticize the Soviet Union for was, to go toe-to-toe on military expenditure in an arms race with the United States, which it could not afford anyway. China is not going to make that mistake, in my view. You can see that already. I mean, although its military spending has been rising, as other people have already said graphically, China's military expenditure is well below that of the United States. So I think that China will not conduct itself in the same kind of way as the Soviet Union did. And I think this is extremely important. And I think that this will greatly assist those forces around the world who are worried about the Cold War and who, like us now, are seeking to campaign against it. Thank you very much. Thank you.